On May 7, 2026, the South Korean Defense Acquisition Program Administration delivered a single line of bureaucratic text that closed an 11-year program. The KF-21 Baramai had received final combat suitability approval. The fighter was certified. Initial operational capability was scheduled for September 2026. Mass production was cleared. The aging F-4 and F-5 fleets that had defended Korean airspace for half a century could finally be retired. 42 months earlier, the first prototype had taken off from Sachon Airport. 6 prototypes flew roughly 1,600 test sorties across 13,000 distinct flight conditions. The first serial production aircraft, designated 26-001, was rolled out on March 25, 2026. It flew 22 days later. That kind of industrial velocity is rare. The cleanest fighter program rollout the world has seen in 2 decades. And the program of record is locked. 120 airframes, 40 Block 1 air-to-air variants by 2028, 80 Block 2 multi-role variants by 2032. But the real story is not that the program was delivered. The real story is what 120 Korean fighters actually buy in a region where the People's Liberation Army Air Force is on track to operate 1,005th generation J-20S by 2030. Welcome back to the channel. The domestic Korean framing is that this fleet will completely dominate regional air combat. The math behind that framing does not survive contact with the Northeast Asian threat geometry. That is not a criticism of the platform. It is a criticism of the framing. 3 structural realities define what the KF-21 actually is. First, it is a 4.5 generation fighter being marketed at a 5th generation price. Second, it operates inside an absolute United States legal compliance regime through its engines. Third, 120 airframes do not provide unilateral dominance against an adversary projected to manufacture stealth fighters at industrial scale. This video walks the achievement, then the architecture, then the friction. What South Korea actually built. Start with the engineering, because the achievement is genuine. Korea Aerospace Industries, with Hanwha Systems, LIG Nex 1, and a domestic supplier base, has produced an indigenous fighter at a localization rate of approximately 65%. That threshold has historically been guarded by only a handful of nations: the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Sweden, and Israel. The crown jewel is the APY-016K active electronically scanned array radar, developed in-country by Hanwha Systems. It carries roughly 1,000 transmit-receive modules. It delivers reliable detection at 150 to 200 kilometers. It tracks more than 20 contacts simultaneously and incorporates low probability of intercept emission modes. Augmenting it is a fully domestic sensor suite, electro-optical targeting, infrared search and track, the ALQ-200K electronic warfare suite, and critically, South Korea owns the source code on the mission computer. Any new domestic weapon can be integrated by Korean engineers without lobbying Lockheed Martin or waiting on a United States Joint Program Office software block. Flight performance is credible. Twin General Electric F-414GE 400K turbofans, each in the 22,000-pound thrust class. Maximum speed, Mach 1.81. Service ceiling roughly 54,800 feet. The European MBDA Meteor air-to-air missile is integrated and combat validated. The industrial pace is the most impressive piece. KAI scales from 20 aircraft in 2025 to 31 by 2027, reaching 47 per year by 2028. A Western fighter program pace almost no current peer is matching. The aircraft is real, the radar is real, the production line is real. Then comes the architecture caveat the marketing tries hard not to mention. The KF-21 is not a 5th-generation fighter. It is shaped like one. Aligned reflective angles, S-ducted engine inlets to mask the compressor blades, radar-absorbing materials on the canopy and leading edges. Visually, it looks the part. But the defining feature of 5th-generation stealth is missing. There is no internal weapons bay. Block 1 and Block 2 carry munitions on semi-recessed ventral stations and external underwing pylons. The moment 4 Meteor missiles, 2 Iris-T effectors, and external fuel tanks are bolted on, the radar cross-section spikes dramatically. The shaping is partially defeated by the very weapons the aircraft is built to deliver. The KF-21 will appear on advanced Chinese and Russian radar screens substantially earlier than an F-35 or a J-20. This is why the platform is correctly classified as 4.5 generation. The Block 3 variant, KF-21EX in some KAI documentation, is the conceptual answer. It would integrate an internal weapons bay, enhanced radar-absorbent structures, and manned-unmanned teaming. That variant is not on contract, it is not on the production line. It is conceptual. Retrofitting an internal bay requires fundamental redesign of load-bearing bulkheads, fuel tank geometry, and center of gravity. Independent engineers note the Block 3 timeline more likely pushes deep into the late 2030s, or gets folded into a clean-sheet 6th-generation effort. The platform is what it is, a capable, sovereign, networked 4.5-generation multi-role fighter, not a stealth penetrator. What 120 airframes actually buy. Set aside the dominance framing. The honest question is what the fleet buys, ROKAF. First, fleet recapitalization. The Phantom F4E retired in 2024. The roughly 138 remaining F5E and F5F Tiger II airframes are obsolete. Without the KF-21, ROKAF stares at a hard capacity gap by 2030. With it, the air-to-air mission is recapitalized by 2028, and the multi-role burden currently carried by the F-15K Slam Eagle and the KF-16 fleets shifts to Block 2 by 2032. Second, sovereign kill chain integration. Because South Korea owns the mission computer source code, ROKAF can integrate domestic Korean glide-guided bombs, the KEPD-350 Taurus cruise missile, future hypersonic weapons, and any sovereign drone architecture without waiting on United States approval. Compare that to the F-35, where every weapon integration is a multi-year Lockheed Martin negotiation. Third, industrial base preservation. KAI's previous program, the T-50 and FA-50 Golden Eagle family, leaned heavily on Lockheed Martin and shared roughly 74% commonality with the F-16. The KF-21 is the first South Korean clean-sheet airframe at this scale. The supplier base it activates is the foundation for whatever 6th-generation effort Seoul attempts next. Fourth, export positioning. KAI has confirmed interest from the United Arab Emirates, Poland, and the Philippines. Indonesia is now negotiating a transactional purchase of 16 Block 2 airframes. None of these are signed contracts as of mid-2026. All are real opportunities, anchored by a price point and a sovereignty pitch that resonates outside the F-35 ecosystem. That is what the program delivers. Not nothing. Significant, just not regional dominance. 6 structural taxes sit on top of the dominance claim. First, the price paradox. The KF-21 Block 1 flyaway cost is approximately 83 million United States dollars. The F-35A flyaway cost, based on lots 15 through 17, is $82.5 million. The KF-21 is slightly more expensive than an F-35A. South Korea is paying a 5th-generation price for 4.5-generation aerodynamics. This is the sovereignty premium, a deliberate strategic choice, but a premium. Second, engine dependency. The F414 GE 400K turbofans are produced in Korea under license, but the core intellectual property and hot section designs remain American. The entire KF-21 falls under United States international traffic and arms regulations. South Korea cannot export to any third nation without State Department approval. That is a sovereign veto. Third, software maturity. Modern air combat is dictated less by maximum speed and more by fused sensor code. The lethal advantage of the F-35 stems from over 2 decades of iterative software development. Hanwha's hardware is real, but the software maturation curve underneath it is not yet equivalent to what the F-35 ecosystem has spent 20 years building. KF-21 pilots will manage a higher cognitive workload than their F-35 counterparts. That gap closes. It does not close immediately. Fourth, the mathematics of attrition. By 2030, the People's Liberation Army Air Force is projected to operate roughly 1,000 J-20 stealth fighters, supported by approximately 900 J-16 heavy fighters. ROKAF will operate 120 KF-21s, roughly 60 F-35As, and a residual legacy fleet. The localized numerical disadvantage approaches 5-to-1 or worse. Quantity has a quality of its own. No amount of Meteor missile reach overcomes a 5-to-1 mass differential against a 5th-generation adversary. Fifth, regional combat is coalition combat. ROKAF does not fight in a vacuum. A high-intensity conflict immediately networks the KF-21 with United States F-22 Raptors, F-35s, and E-3 AWACS, and with Japan Air Self-Defense Force F-35A and F-35B fleets via Link 16. The KF-21 is not designed to penetrate Chinese integrated air defenses alone. It is designed as a high-capacity sortie node defending Allied airspace, while true penetrators prosecute deep strike. Sixth, industrial scale-up risk. The 47 aircraft annual rate KAI targets by 2028 is unprecedented for a domestic Korean airframe. If Hanwha hits ASA module bottlenecks, or if any Tier 2 supplier slips, the 2032 completion slips with it. One more friction point. The Indonesia partnership has been fundamentally restructured. After payment arrears and an industrial espionage incident in early 2024, Indonesian engineers caught exfiltrating classified data via unauthorized USB devices. The agreement was renegotiated in February 2026. Jakarta's commitment was cut from 1.6 trillion Korean won to 600 billion. Indonesia is now a transactional customer negotiating 16 Block 2 airframes. A letter of intent, not a signed contract. The question is no longer whether the KF-21 program succeeded. It did. The certification is signed. The aircraft is flying. The production line is running. The question is which version arrives in 2032. On one road, KAI sustains its 47 aircraft rate. Hanwha closes the sensor fusion software gap. Block 2 integrates Korean glide bombs and the KEPD-350 on schedule. The export pipeline converts United Arab Emirates and Polish interest into signed contracts. Indonesia confirms its 16 airframe purchase. By 2032, ROKAF fields 120 domestically built fighters that integrate seamlessly with 60 F-35As and form the dense tactical fighter middle of a multi-tier coalition force. On that road, the KF-21 delivers exactly what it was designed to deliver. Not regional dominance, sovereign coalition mass. On the other road, supplier scale-up stumbles. The 47 per year rate slips to 30. The Block 3 redesign requires a clean sheet airframe and gets folded into an undefined sixth-generation effort. Indonesia walks. The PLAAF crosses 1,000 operational J-20S on schedule. The sovereignty premium remains real, but the dominance framing collapses under the weight of the actual 5-to-1 fleet ratio. None of these risks are fatal. All of them are real. The KF-21 is not a fifth-generation stealth penetrator. It is not a regional dominance platform. It is a sovereign 4.5-generation kill chain hedge. Exactly what ROKAF designed it to be. South Korea bought autonomy. It did not buy supremacy. The next decade decides whether autonomy was the right purchase.